The desert was hot, dusty, and unforgiving. So we learned a whole lot about how to set up communications in an austere environment. Then we go to DRF1, and we have to be completely ready within 18 hours to go anywhere in the world.
Welcome to the Engaged by Design podcast, where we help you engage more learners more effectively. Today on the podcast, Vernon sits down with our old friend Ken Williams, who is a cybersecurity expert. He has a great story and a lot to say about how cybersecurity and AI are impacting higher education and society in general. This one's going to be broken into 3 parts because it's so good. Ken has so many great things to share with us. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview with Vernon and Ken.
Well, welcome, Dr. Kenneth Williams, to the Engaged by Design podcast. Ken, how are you doing today?
I'm excellent, Vernon. Thank you for having me.
Oh, so glad to be able to have you join us on the podcast, because I think you are actually a timely guest at a timely time for many things that are going on in higher education and also in society in general. Ken, for those that may not be familiar with you, could you give us a little bit of background about who is Dr. Ken Williams?
Thank you very much, Vernon. So Kenneth Williams is a Guyana, South America born individual who immigrated to the country in 1980. And shortly after immigration in New York, I was able to join the military and went on to start a career in the military. I joined as an enlisted, and then I started to do additional college courses to sort of improve my academic abilities, and realized that I could do so much more. So I subsequently decided I'm not going to stay as an enlisted. I'm just going to move on to become an officer. And I was able to do that in 1986 by just leaving the military, resigning to go to the Army ROTC program at Campbell University in North Carolina, which was close to where I was based in Fort Bragg. So they accepted me after, an associate's degree level of completion for a 2 years program in the Army ROTC program at that point, with an expected graduation in 1989. And I gave up the military career at that point to become an officer, and it worked out. It worked out because I was able to get commissioned.
I think it did work out. Talk about that. After you got your commission, talk about your path from there.
Yeah, so 3 children at that point, and I took a big risk. Got commissioned, and returned back to the same unit as the 2nd Airborne Division, now as an officer in a different role. And shortly thereafter was when the first Gulf War OIF came about. And I was the platoon leader, cyber IT communications individual who had a team of 35 plus. So we had to get prepared for this conflict that we had no advance notice about. So we had a real steep learning curve in IT and cyber in those days, which was like a Verizon, because we had everything. We had satellite systems, we had computers, we had data tropo systems, you name it, that what you see with a regular telecommunications provider today is what we had under my command, millions of dollars of things that we had to get downrange to, not to Iraq, but into Saudi Arabia, be poised to defend against Saddam's invading Saudi Arabia. And that was quite an interesting endeavor.
So Ken, there's not infrastructure to do a lot of these things, that you're taking this high-tech, high equipment, very, very valuable equipment over to Saudi Arabia to combat the potential invasion from Saddam Hussein. That couldn't have been easy.
That's right. So once we had to set up entire telephones and radio and data circuits in order to talk to the Marine forces that were there, talk to the joint forces that were managing, and the Navy forces that were managing the entire theater operation, talked to the aircraft that were preparing to launch and fight against Saddam, talked to the supply individuals that are shipping our supplies from the United States into there. And my role was to set up that entire communications capability and secure it. We all rolled up our sleeves and played a role in the desert. The desert was hot, dusty, and unforgiving. So we learned a whole lot about how to set up communications in an austere environment and to communicate to the warfighter, the decision maker, the person that was making the decision, and the person who was talking and moving the forces from point A to point B, and coordinating friendly forces against enemy forces.
So after you finished your tour there,
Yes.
tell me what happened next.
Yeah, so after 8 months out there, we returned to the U.S. and started to get back into the normal operations of what it's like to be in the military and prepare probably for the next conflict. We were in the 82nd Airborne Division, the deployment readiness force. We were always supposed to be ready within 18 hours to go any place in the world. So we are always, when we come back, we are going to the lower readiness cycle, then we ramp up to the second readiness cycle, which is DRF 2, then we go to DRF 1, and we have to be completely ready within 18 hours to go anywhere in the world. So that cycle repeated itself over and over again. And we really, really learned a lot about IT, cyber, and the works, how to get ourselves prepared for that. So I went on and left there in 1990 to go to Germany on an assignment. And that assignment was the Fifth Signal Command in Germany, in Heidelberg and Mannheim. So I was a captain at that point in 2003. We went out there and started to then prepare for OIF, Operation Enduring Freedom number 2, which was now a NATO type led environment, and a lot of other forces supported. So we set up this major international network in order to do that, planned and operated. And planning was a major part of this because we had coalition forces, how they fight, how they operate, how the U.S. fight, how the Navy fight, et cetera. And we did that and then launched our attack, as you don't know, for IF2. So that was also great experience and understanding how IT data systems all work together. And it was a fabulous education in managing data systems and an entire network and securing them as well. So I left Germany in 2003, moved my family back to the United States and settled in at Fort Shafter, Virginia, where I subsequently retired. And
thank you for your service. We appreciate your service, Ken.
Indeed, but 24 years of service at that point. So after I retired, I actually started a business there in Hampton and started to focus on all the things that I did while I was in the military to try to enhance that IT and cyber skills. Now with an enhanced empirical knowledge related to the disciplines of cyber and IT, et cetera. I worked along with the military and the Pentagon. I was an inspector general during that period of time, helping the Army to get compliance with security. And we did that all over the continental United States and outside the United States, trying to get them compliance with FISMA, Federal Information Security Compliance Agency. We did that. We got them compliance, and then we got them compliance with what's called a risk management framework and COVID standards, et cetera. And that was really, really also a huge learning experience. That was a time when I figured that I need to probably get a higher level of terminal degree, and I was able to start and get a doctoral degree, a PhD in cybersecurity from Capella University, and then started to teach at the local community college there at the Northern Virginia Community College.
Shout out to Nova. Shout out to the community colleges always.
That's right. Also, around the same time, I also started to teach at University of Maryland Community, UMUC at that point. They were in Fort Bragg. I'm sorry, they were in the Marine Corps base in Virginia. They wanted me to manage the courses there. So I was teaching the earlier days in IT and cyber. I was a member of their staff there. And then subsequently, I also started to work for DeVry University. I also taught their cyber courses at that point before I came to American Public University system where I met you, Vernon.
That's true. So let's talk a little bit about that. So I had a huge problem. I was a new provost. I had come over from the University of the Pacific in California, but I took this role as the provost at American Public University, which includes American Military University. And I was looking at our efforts to get NSA CAE, and I'm going to have you explain what this is in a second, NSA CAE certification. And it was, when I got there, it was really stalled. In fact, I think there were a couple of failures in doing this. Now, I saw this as being mission critical because it said so much about the alignment between national security and cybersecurity, which is really critical. And so I said, I want to talk to my director of the cybersecurity program. I want to talk to Ken. I don't want to talk to the dean. I want to talk to Ken Williams. And we had a conversation. And can you talk a little bit about what NSA CAE is and your efforts there? Because you really solved a huge problem. That's where I got to know you.
Yeah. So for me, it was perfect because I spent 9 years as an inspector general, understanding the importance of processes and getting throughput and efficiencies in what you're doing. And the discipline of cybersecurity maybe was best when it's streamlined processes, there are clear processes, et cetera. The Center of Academic Excellence in Cybersecurity, CAE, was commissioned by the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Agency, who thought the same. Look, we have to have these processes, which at that point, the standards were to the NIST 853, and we wanted to make sure there were clear processes to protect our data networks. So we need to get academia to teach this thing, to get students prepared to be the workers in the field. So let's commission them to have curricula that espouses the standards. And the outcome of that was the Center of Academic Excellence designation with the knowledge units specifically embedded in those curriculum. So we had an opportunity. We saw that as an American Public University system, and we said, we want to be part of this. And rightfully so, because it drives to career, is embedded in the NICE framework at this point. And the NICE tells the world and tell workers, look, these are the knowledge and skills that college graduates get upon graduation out of a cyber program, for example. And we're going to prepare them, and we're going to have measurable and achievable goals and standards. So the knowledge and skills are measurable and achievable. The 4 years program are verifiable, and they're repeatable. So that if you get a Center of Academic Excellence curriculum, you know what are taught every year, and you can verify that, tied all the way out to the course objectives or the weekly objectives. And then you could authenticate that with the knowledge units for what is expected in the workplace. So you know for sure if someone goes into one of these universities and they go to this program, that they have all those knowledge and skills. Because you could go there and you could say, okay, show me the curriculum. Show me your transcripts. And based on your transcripts, I know that you've been taught and you've practiced it in labs and practical skills development. So you could come into the workplace and do what we expect you to do. Because outside there in the real world, when the student graduates and we are hired as student, we don't want the student lost. The student is like a mechanic. The student is like a doctor. The student is like a skilled individual. On top of that, of course, they're critical thinkers. We want them to come on in and get in that data center and figure out something and figure out how to solve a problem and fix it, not a gap. So the CAE endeavored in order to close the gap between traditional academic instructions and the knowledge and skills from what is expected in industry. So that's what we were after, and that's what we were able to achieve in the American Public University System.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I remember you told me afterwards, and I had forgot about that. When we had that meeting, I think I said something to you like, failure is not an option. And
You sure
you
did.
remembered that. And I remember sitting in a meeting when we were presenting, and then Provost Smith said, "There's failure is not an option." And I was very concerned because there had been some stops and starts along the way.
Yes.
But I think your background as an inspector general, your deep knowledge of what was going on did that. And for folks that don't know about the CAE, you also have your key learning objectives, right? Talk about
The knowledge
those
units.
Yes, the knowledge units. Yes.
Yes,
Talk
yes.
about that a
And
little
those
bit.
knowledge units they're tied to the NICE framework today, and that develops the outcomes into the skills, such as a cyber analyst, such as a forensics investigator, such as an AI analyst, such as a data analyst. Those knowledge units are explicitly designed in that curriculum in order to produce those career sets. So any students that are specialized or has that specific focus in those degrees that we have, the concentrated area, they're coming out with those knowledge units, knowledge and skills, and they understand the technology, and they know how to implement the technology and troubleshoot the technology. Of course, on top of all of that are the critical thinking, because there are various. What is not taught is how to think critically, but because we put the students to various scenarios where they're given, for example, ransomware, like what just happened with the Canvas infrastructure system, for example. And with that Canvas infrastructure system is something that very few people would have thought that would have occurred. That is called a downstream breach, where you log in and you get a two-factor authentication, and everyone thinks that you're okay. Well, once that was done, and then there's a phishing attempt that occurred, the user that's already logged in into the Canvas learning system accepted the phishing attempt and open, and that credential is already set. That file was already open, and now the hacker was able to get in. Well, that's critical thinking. This is a phishing attempt. Understanding what a phishing attempt is, and not falling prey to that phishing attempt. That's critically thinking about that, along with the fact that the application program interface that was in place for Canvas at that point, the keys were not updated. The keys were not exchanged out in timely manner. So going beyond the topical clues of how to manage a network or secure a network, and persisting to examine every possible aspect of securing this network is what needed to be done. And that's what the knowledge units teaches the students in the CAE network.
I love how you use this example of Canvas, the breach that happened there, and the ransomware, which apparently they paid. And I would love to know how much that was, but I was told it wasn't that much. But, relatively speaking, I love how you relate that, because the skills that you learn in that area are really critical. Let's go for one more story with APUS, and let's move on to your further work with this. So during this time, I was approached by Bob Zimsky and Lori Carroll at the College in 3. It was called Initiative right then, and now it's called the College in 3 Exchange. And they asked us to join a consortium of 10 colleges and universities to look and see where we could possibly create a 3-year baccalaureate degree. Now, I remember having that conversation and saying, yeah, I want to be part of this, because I looked at this for a number of years and thought it was extremely appropriate, especially in what I'd call technical and trade areas that can really, really help. And we got in this effort, and I said, I got you in my office again. And I remember with the dean, I think Danny Welsh was working with it at that time. And we said, okay, how can we do this? And so how can we take a 120-hour degree and actually fulfill all these knowledge units that we need that are required, but do it in a shorter amount of time. Talk about the approach that you took, Ken.
Yeah, first of all, it was, again, that enthusiasm of adding efficiencies to a degree. My core conviction is that when we developed a process of higher learning in our society, when we formed society, and you know more about that than I do, but when we formed society, we asked ourselves how much education beyond school or beyond apprenticeship in those cases that we needed to do. And we developed these layers of education. And then we eventually got to a higher education level. And somewhere along the line, we decided that a bachelor's degree is 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's okay. It's okay for it to be 4 years. But what occurred subsequently is that the cost started to go up. And the families started to be shut out. Some families started to be shut out. I know I'm a parent of 5, and every time I had to, make the decision, I have to send my child to school. Well, what is the cost? 60,000,
Yes.
100,000, 200,000.
If you're a parent paying tuition, that becomes very real, very quick. You know your kids. I had 4 kids in college at the same time. It's rough.
Yeah. So when I look at this 4 years degree, I'm starting to see some efficiency, some savings in there. Even to begin with the general ed topics that were already taught at high school. Now, we're not getting there yet, but to reinforce learning or to skill up that learner to get them to where we started in our education in a society, the journeyman, the apprentice. The apprentice has got to learn the skill. No, we didn't have the full requirement back then for them to be so highly educated, math, language, science, and liberal arts, etc. We didn't have that, but we put that on top of our degree. But this opportunity, this challenge that you brought to me, this assignment you brought to me, allowed me to look at this and say, okay, I have some of these ingredients already in the degree. Additionally, there's a graduate degree that follows this that we could look at accelerating and fusing them together by minimizing the 4 years into 3 years, and then moving that student on to the graduate degree subsequently. So we're getting 2 bangs with one bullet there. We're getting some efficiency, and we're saving a lot of money.
Absolutely.
We save a lot of money. So my
cut
approach
off
to that,
year, and it's usually people don't get done in 4 years. The statistics, what the record is, it takes them 5, sometimes 6 years to get through.
That's right.
And so this is a lot of money.
Yes, and so but the drive and passion was to draw pathways between what is necessary for the degree, what is necessary for the subsequent degree that most of the students are going to go into, what can we do without by mapping those knowledge and skills that we had in the bachelor's degree and deciding what are redundant. We found a lot of redundancies when we did the mapping, right? Mapping to the knowledge skills, mapping from the general ed. We were able to find those redundancies and eliminate them or condense them.
I love that. It's like you're going and, oftentimes you're going to do this. Well, why am I repeating this? I did this in high school.
Right.
I'm doing it again. And you have me do it in this class, and I'm repeating it in this class.
That's
what
right.
is the point of doing that if it's almost exactly the same if I've already mastered it?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's super important that we take a look at the 3-year degree or 4-year degrees and say, come on, what is really needful and what is not needful?
Then, Vernon, again, we have to get back to the core of where we started as a civilization. And as you said, these skills, degrees such as cyber, are hands-on, effective skills, right? And that hands-on effective skills are doing, so learn, do. Once I could get the student to do the critical thinking, most of the times they're practicing what they're learning in the classroom. They're repeating what they've learned And we're getting their knowledge built up so they could go stop that ransomware from going too far, and that its campus infrastructure breach. They could to get a network up really, really quickly. That's what I want the students to do. I want them to do that as much as I can. So by eliminating those liberal arts as much as I can and condensing them into the knowledge skills, I'll have a greater impact on those students in order to get them out there into the workforce. And that's what I was able to do, draw a map in between what are really, really necessary, absolutely necessary for that degree, and by minimizing and reducing redundancies.
So when we got to that point, I believe it was 92 or 96 hours that we had.
It was not 96 hours.
96 hours. Yes, that's correct. 96 hours. And I remember having a conversation with one of the commissioners who will go nameless at the Higher Learning Commission, because they subsequently changed their viewpoint on this. But the conversation was this: there is a reason that we have 120 degree hours in a 4-year baccalaureate degree. In a baccalaureate degree, it's 120 hours because those are the things that need it. You cannot take a container that only holds 3/4 of that and try to put all of it into the container. You can't do that. That was sort of the thinking that was at that point. And you and I and others were, adamant that there are efficiencies. It's not kind to the learners. It's not thoughtful of the learners. If we're really being student-centric, we're going to not waste their time, frankly, and their money, but waste their time on things that we've already gone. We've already been there and done that. So we got this together. We had the 96 degree. At about that time, I decided to exit American Public University, and but the curriculum was in place, right? I'm trying to think of it. The curriculum, the plan was in place. We knew how to map everything with the outcomes, and they all map to the NSA knowledge units completely.
Right. Correct.
And any other things you want to say about the curriculum and the work that you did then?
Yeah, and we were able to become designated as a Center of Academic Excellence. I was called to take the model to different universities, Baylor University, a few others. I actually went on site and showed them how we did that. And they were great. I also went out to California. And as a matter of fact,
we got to talk about that. We got to talk about that.
Yes.
So as you're working, look at all the things that you're doing here. You're working on taking care of the NSA, CAE, and also the duties. We're going to talk about that in a second, but you're also working on this 3-year baccalaureate degree for cybersecurity. In addition, I couldn't help but drag you along, and I hope you didn't feel like you're dragged along, when we would visit our partners out with the California community colleges.
That's right. Do
you want to talk about that story?
Oh, absolutely. So after you asked me and I accepted that challenge, my wife always said that I can never say no, but but I went out to California to start consulting with them about how to do this. Not only how to do this, but also how to get all the districts, 42 districts, I believe, together to do this, to use this model and to share resources. The biggest aspect of that was to benefit the students in the California community systems. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, at that point, there weren't a pathway for them to get to the 4-year colleges.
There wasn't, especially online at that time. There was not.
Yes. So they welcomed us with open arms. We were great. It was great to get this going and bring those exact model to them and show them how to do that. So I went out there numerous times and sat with them. It took quite a few visits and some engaged communities of all the colleges who were involved. We talked through the curriculum. We designed the curriculum. We brainstormed it, and we built it. Built it in order to meet them. And then we had the administrative bodies that were dealing with how to scale it across the different participant colleges out there.
Yeah, talk about your contact with the and that we met with our contact. We'll give him I'll let you give the shout out to our real advocate that was in the chancellor's office in the California community colleges.
Yeah, so Mr. Dr. LeBaron Woodard, he was definitely the one that was so much able to keep it together he had a great relationship. I believe he was close to his 30th year then.
Mm-hmm.
and everyone knew him and everyone trusted him. He was in the chancellor's office, Billy's vice chancellor, and he was able to get them together, which was not an easy feat because, again, I believe that each of them had their own budgets
Mm-hmm.
that were given to them by the board or the board of community colleges, and they could have said no.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were pretty resistant. I
Sure.
would mention the name, but they said, why should we join? Why should we join with value there are? There were poor, there were poor counties in California,
Yes, absolutely.
and there were rich counties in California, and there were some concerns about, hey, why should we share our resources, share our faculty, share your time, etc. But Dr. Warren was able to pull it all together, get us all in a room, and show and explain to them this is possible and this is done. And I was able to explain to them how important this is to come together because you have a group of individuals who are trying to do this together, and it's better to have the group versus having one or two who are trying to do this on their own.
Mm-hmm.
But
So efficiencies across the system, again,
yes,
the efficiency coming in, but
that's
it's also
right.
innovative because it's collaborating ways. And, sometimes we would ask, why were you send out your chair of your department to go and assist these students? Well, guess what? My opinion was that this is well served because these are future students that we have, or it's just the right thing to do. When you're part of a professionalization and things like that, you need to have you have a responsibility to give back. And Ken, you became that mechanism to really give back. Talk about the final product and how it's flourished over time.
Yeah, so and Vernon, that's a timely question. Thank you so much for that. So I shared with you that I was pleasantly surprised a month ago to host a group of 30 plus students from the California Community College consortium of cybersecurity colleges that came to bring their students here to the cybersecurity program here at Southern University to become a part of matriculated to SAR agreement from their program there, the 2 years college, into this college, into this university. And it was a gift that landed on my lap. I never expected this to occur. And when I asked where you guys are from and what program that you're in, and they told me, I had to sit down because I just couldn't believe
Oh, wow.
that this is something that I helped to design. And here it is to fruition. And those students were bright. They were enthusiastic. They were so happy. Them and their counselors were so happy that they're able to get choices through to degrees outside, not only in California, but outside of California, and any state that they choose to go to as a result of this education and center of academic excellence and learning that they're getting. That was so awesome and fulfilling and gratifying for the effort that I was able to be a part of.
Isn't it lovely to see a legacy of work that was very important and just seeing it bloom in the lives of students? And they're going to be great students, I'm sure.
Well, yes, they will. Yes, they will. Also, I have to give credit to you, Vernon, because again, you don't have to afford the resource for APUS. You don't have to do that. But you also didn't have to have the confidence that I could get this done without failure. That is, no failure, because it really set the program, the American APUS, in a good light as well. And it also was able to get individuals there to see that we are legitimate, credible universities that's here to help. And that was gratifying to them. That really boosts their confidence. So we're able to knit them together, all the disparate views of what the universities were dealing with, to show them, look, let's sit on the same table and design something that is fitting for California as well. Yes.
Yeah, for California students, I just think of all the students that are being served now, specifically out of this program, and it's very timely.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of our conversation with Dr. Ken Williams. I hope you're learning as much as we are from his great experience and his stories. Now, next time, in part 2 of our conversation with Ken, he's going to explain how he took those lessons from his experience into higher education, building cybersecurity programs, embedding industry certifications into curriculum, and helping shape the national workforce standards around cybersecurity. So we can't wait for you to hear the next part. Please join us for part 2 with Dr. Ken Williams. And as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with a friend so we can all learn better to engage by design.